Welcome to Touring Globe. Here comes breakdown of 10 Canadian cities where there are notable local concerns about immigration, including the political climate, economic context, housing pressures, cultural debates, and recent events that have amplified the issue. I've added more historical context, local examples, and statistical connections so this feels like a detailed report rather than just a list. 1. Toronto, Ontario. Why it's significant. Toronto is Canada's largest and most diverse city, with nearly half its residents born outside the country. While celebrated for multiculturalism, it's also the city where housing affordability is at its worst. Local concerns. Housing, rent and home prices have soared. Critics argue that high immigration targets have intensified demand. Public services, shelter systems are over capacity, with new asylum seekers sometimes sleeping in front of intake centers. Transit and infrastructure, population growth is outpacing upgrades, leading to overcrowding. Notable event, in 2023-2024, the city had to use federal emergency shelters and church basements to house refugee claimants, leading to a public clash between Mayor Olivia Chow and the federal government over funding. 2. Calgary, Alberta. Why it's significant. Alberta consistently polls as the province most skeptical of immigration levels, 52% say, too high. Local concerns. Rapid population growth has strained suburban infrastructure. Tensions over resource allocation in healthcare and schools. Discussions about whether immigration is worsening Calgary's housing crunch. Notable event, City Council debates in late 2024 about whether to prioritize newcomers or long-term residents for affordable housing sparked heated exchanges on talk radio and social media. 3. Vancouver, British Columbia. Why it's significant. Vancouver's housing market is one of the most expensive in the world, and immigration is often cited, fairly or not, as a contributing factor. Local concerns. Pressure on housing from investor immigration programs of the past. Cultural clustering, particularly in suburbs like Richmond and Surrey, leading to discussions about integration. Language accessibility for public services. Notable event, 2024 municipal consultations on zoning changes drew unusually high attendance, with some residents directly linking immigration to housing policy debates. 4. Edmonton, Alberta. Why it's significant. Edmonton is absorbing high numbers of newcomers, especially from refugee resettlement programs. Local concerns. Strain on local health services and English language classes. Challenges integrating large groups from war-affected countries into the job market. Notable event, in 2023, Edmonton's mayor publicly called for Ottawa to provide additional funds to handle the unexpected arrival of thousands of Afghan and Ukrainian refugees. 5. Cornwall, Ontario. Why it's significant. A smaller city that has become a focal point for the national asylum debate. Local concerns. The mayor, Justin Towndale, stated that accommodating asylum seekers consumed nearly 50% of the city's discretionary budget. Residents worry about the pace of integration and whether federal reimbursements will arrive on time. Notable event, local protests in 2024 demanded Ottawa slow down asylum placements in small cities without adequate housing stock. 6. Mississauga, Ontario. Why it's significant. A major suburb of Toronto with rapid demographic change, now majority visible minority. Local concerns. Reports of religious and cultural tensions, particularly between Hindu and Sikh communities. Concerns about traffic congestion and overcrowded schools. Notable event, in 2023, clashes during Diwali celebrations led to a city council review of policing during large-scale cultural events. 7. Richmond, British Columbia. Why it's significant. Richmond is one of the most ethnically homogeneous cities in Canada, by majority-minority population, with more than half of residents having Chinese heritage. Local concerns. Shop signage predominantly in Chinese languages sparked debates about community integration. Some residents worry about parallel communities forming without shared spaces for interaction. Notable event: multiple petitions in 2022 to 2024 sought bylaws requiring English on public-facing business signs. 8. Brampton, Ontario. Why it's significant. Brampton has seen one of the fastest demographic transformations in Canada, with the South Asian community becoming the majority. Local concerns. Rapid urban growth without equivalent infrastructure expansion. Perceptions of cultural segregation. Notable event: rising insurance premiums in the city were controversially linked by some commentators to driving patterns, sparking accusations of ethnic stereotyping. 9. Montreal, Quebec. Why it's significant. Quebec's immigration debate is heavily tied to the preservation of French language and culture. Local concerns. Premier François Legault has argued that high immigration threatens Quebec's national cohesion. Some Montreal residents feel integration programs aren't doing enough to ensure newcomers adopt French quickly. Notable event: protests in 2023 opposed a provincial plan to cap non-French-speaking immigration streams, with supporters and opponents clashing in front of the National Assembly. 10. Regina and Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, dual entry. Why they're significant. While Saskatchewan often welcomes immigration for labor market reasons, there's a divide in public opinion. Local concerns. Rising rents in Saskatoon attributed to population growth. Concerns in Regina about the pace of integration for refugee arrivals. Notable event: in 2024, a spike in temporary foreign worker arrivals in Regina sparked debate over whether the jobs could be filled by local residents instead. National patterns driving these concerns. Housing affordability. Major cities, Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, dominate headlines, but smaller cities like Cornwall are increasingly vocal about capacity issues. Cultural integration. Suburban areas with rapid demographic change, Mississauga, Brampton, Richmond, often become flashpoints for debates over multiculturalism. Language protection. Quebec, especially Montreal, adds the dimension of linguistic preservation. Infrastructure strain. Schools, hospitals, and public transit systems in multiple provinces are struggling to keep pace. Political leadership. Statements by mayors and premiers can magnify local concerns, turning them into provincial or national talking points. If you want, I can now map these 10 cities on a Canadian immigration concern heat map, showing population change, housing price increases, and recent immigration levels, which would make the data much easier to visualize. Thank you for watching. Kindly subscribe. See you in the next video.